Hi everyone, today's lesson is lesson number 15, Daniel and his three friends in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had fought against Jerusalem and led away its people as captives. Among those captives was a young boy called Daniel and his three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Together with the other captives, they were brought to Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar wanted the best captives to learn the ways of Babylon and live with him. He told his servants to choose people that were healthy and handsome and had come from royal family. Daniel and his three friends were among those chosen for this great honour. When they arrived, they were given new names. They were now Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Their new names honoured the gods of Babylon. For 3 years they would learn the wisdom and the language of Babylon. They would eat of the king's own food and drink his wine. At the end of 3 years, they would be brought before the king. The king hoped by then that they would forget about the God of Israel. But Daniel and his three friends loved God. They knew that he commanded them not to worship idols. The food which the king was giving them had been offered to false gods. To eat the king's food would be to disobey God. So they decided that whatever happened to them, they would obey God. So Daniel came to speak to the king's servant. The king's servant showed him the food that they would eat. But Daniel refused. He said to the king's servant, "We will not eat any of that food." And the king's servant was worried. He said, I fear the king. I fear that you're not going to look as healthy to the king, and that will make him unhappy. But Daniel said, "Test us for 10 days. Give me just vegetables to eat and water to drink. After that, you will see that we will be just as healthy as all the other men." Daniel believed that God would help him. So the servant, he agreed to this test. For 10 days, Daniel and his three friends were tested. They only had beans to eat and water to drink. But God was with them. And as they continued to eat and drink, and all the other men tried to remain fit and healthy for the king, day after day, Daniel and his friends still did the same and kept praying to God. After 10 days, their faces were fairer and plumper than those of the young men who had eaten the king's food. So the king's servant took away their meals and the wine that they were supposed to drink, and for 3 years they lived on vegetables and water in the king's palace. God had blessed these 4 young men. He gave them knowledge and understanding. Daniel was even able to understand visions and dreams because God was with him and would tell him the meaning. At the end of 3 years, all the young men were brought before the king. When he talked with them, he could see that Daniel and his 3 friends were wiser and healthier than all the other young men. He chose them to stay with him and to help rule his people. he found that they were 10 times wiser than the magicians and astrologers in his kingdom. So the magicians and astrologers in his kingdom weren't needed anymore.
Yeah.
So Daniel and his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were blessed because they had faith to obey God. They found that the wisdom which God gave them was far greater than the wisdom in this world. We must obey God rather than men. If we are brave like Daniel and his 3 friends, God will bless us. We'll have nothing to lose by choosing to obey God, for his gifts are greater than anything man can give us. And his wisdom, which is found in the Bible, is the greatest wisdom of the whole world.